right, hey everybody. Well, thank you so much for having me, and it's awesome to share the stage here with Allison. We've had the honor of working together for the last 6 years or something, building Gainsight and building this whole customer success kind of motion. And so, the last session, Allison walked us through our philosophy on customer success. This is sort of going to flip it on the marketing side and offer a point of view on how we tried to sort of bring this customer success market into reality at a time when it was still kind of new and nascent, and how you can sort of think about category creation too. So a couple things, actually, before I get started. I have just left Gainsight, and I'm now in a venture capital firm, so I'm obligated to show a slide that you may not be able to read. That basically says everything I talk about here is not reflective of Battery or their investment strategy, just building on my experience from Gainsight and working on this stuff. So that's what this is. So we're going to cover a lot of ground. We're going to talk about what category creation is, why should you do it, how to know that your business is sort of a good candidate for category creation, and then at the end, I'm going to give some very tactical next steps of how you can go and both create a category and then go on to dominate that category. But we'll move quick in that action-packed 30 minutes. So before I get there, I wanted to start with a kind of philosophical question. How many of you believe there are any original ideas left in the world? I think a couple folks, okay. If the answer is no, I think you're in good company. Actually, Mark Twain has that famous quote of saying, there are no original ideas left. Everything is a reinvention of an old idea, just kind of viewed through a new lens. And I think there's some truth to that. If you look at the top 10 box office hits of all time, all of the top 10 movies, with the exception of 2, are reinventions of old concepts. Jurassic World, Furious 7. You could argue Titanic is even kind of on the bubble there, right? But the 2 that are original ideas, ironically, both created by James Cameron, maybe one of the last original thinkers of our time. But this obsession with disruption, of reinvention of old concepts, is especially true in technology. In fact, Silicon Valley is kind of obsessed with the word disruption. And these are just on the bottom some of the 2019 IPO logos that are great, very successful businesses that have disrupted kind of existing ideas that are showing up top. So this idea of disruption isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I don't know. I think that the death of originality might be a little exaggerated. I think there are a lot of good examples in our consumer lives of new concepts that were introduced, and that perhaps maybe there's actually a pragmatic way to bring these new ideas to life and sort of create this cognitive reference in people's minds that might not have existed before. I think about a group of scientists in Florida that kind of observed that carbohydrates and electrolytes were depleted for the athletes that were put on the field, and created a solution for helping them with that. I remember a world where coffee didn't come in pod form, or when getting in the car with strangers was kind of a bad thing. But these are now part of our new reality of how we live our lives. And on the B2B side, the examples are there too. We have companies like Salesforce and DocuSign, HubSpot, many others that have introduced kind of a new way of working into our lives. But they're also kind of introducing, obviously, the new products that go and sort of monetize that. And as a result, they've experienced tremendous success. I think these 3 logos themselves represent about $140 billion of market cap, and so surely there is kind of market value attributed to doing this. So how do they do it? Well, they used a strategy that has since become known as category creation. And this is the output of a new a new industry of products and services that are distinct and differentiated than anything that has come before them. And the idea is there's to sort of engineer a single company at the top of this market that's sort of operating against that kind of a winner-take-all kind of motion. Unlike disruption, category creation doesn't have an incumbent kind of brand in the marketplace. There's no single company that's articulating the value proposition in the same way. So the value proposition isn't just different. It's not just a better mousetrap. It's brand new. So I won't give the Gainsight background. I think you heard a little bit about it. But what was interesting is when I first joined the company, the website looked like this. It was J Barra Software was the name of the business. I think this is like a Wix.com type of template thing. But what the reality is, the company had a few hundred K of ARR, so demonstrated some early traction. And if you look at these logos, 2013, these are some good companies that were validating the value proposition that this young kind of small company was sort of observing. And so one of the first things that we did was start briefing the analyst community. So we talked to Gartner and Forrester and the others, and we said, we put them on the phone with our customers, we gave them a demo of the product, and we said, who are we? Like, how do you see us? And what's interesting about the analyst community is they, all of their advice was sort of compartmentalized into these existing research areas that they covered. So this was 2013, so everything was predictive analytics, right? So we were predictive analytics for support, or we were CRM. And that just, it sort of felt like kind of right, but it didn't give us sort of the conviction that we thought we had for this business. The conviction we did have was observing that there was a job title that existed called the Customer Success Manager. And we don't claim any credit for inventing this. I think Salesforce named this role. But this was a group that would meet online on LinkedIn and kind of share best practices with each other, kind of build network, build community. This was a group that would meet in various office parks around the valley, just sharing, again, best practices. And we would go and sit in on some of these meetings. And it was pizza and beer. It wasn't bright lights and monitors. But there was this feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm finally around other people that are going through what I'm going through. And that feeling was something that was so unique. And so we sort of hit this kind of crossroads where we said we can either go by the way of Gartner and Forrester and all these folks, take that into the traditional motion, maybe take a disruption position against Zendesk or Salesforce or something along those lines, or we can follow what we thought was sort of the right path, which was celebrate this persona that no company was paying attention to in a very meaningful way. And so the idea was if we can make them heroes, if we can resource them, build community, all these sorts of things, maybe we can build a great company along the way. So that's what we did. And 6.5 years later, we wrote the book on customer success, has over, I think, 50,000 copies sold and translated into local markets. One of the things that, from a category creation perspective, a metric that we didn't really expect, is that marginalized group, that small niche community, is now, for the last few years, one of the top 3 fastest growing jobs in the world, according to LinkedIn data. So that was kind of very assuring that this is now a thing. And beyond that, obviously, Gainsight's been able to kind of grow and kind of be sort of realizing its potential as well. So with all of these things, the question becomes, why do this? Zoom's logo looked pretty good. That S1 read pretty right. Like, why should I start a category? Why should I create a category? And the reason is all of the stakeholders involved with companies that are creating categories have a ton of incremental value to realize. So from the investor's perspective, HBR says that companies that are able to create and then go on and dominate their category saw 53% incremental market share than their peer set, 74% incremental market cap growth. So we know investors love it, and the market values companies that can both create and go on and own a category. And if you're a startup and you're on this journey and you're sort of investing in building this market, building this kind of motion, you're sort of starting to see the early traction from a leadership perspective in this community. It's great. You're able to have access to more funding. You can attract and retain and engage your best talent, higher valuation than your competitors, and honestly, over time, a better chance of sort of winning in the marketplace. But I think there's something else that goes beyond just the quantitative measures of success, financial metrics, all these sorts of things. There's undoubtedly a higher calling for customers and teammates and folks that are on this journey of creating a category, folks that are enrolled in this mission from an organizational perspective. Customers benefit from a brand in the marketplace that exists to help serve them and champion their own success. And that's inspiring. Folks want, we all, I think, as consumers, want to work with a market leader. Employees have a chance to bet their careers on a company that's gets to unleash their creativity in the workplace and be a part of a great corporate culture, all these sorts of things, and help tell this story, help sort of contribute to the momentum of building a new movement. So with that being the case, the next logical question is, well, is this for me? Is this for my company? I think potentially we have we're in a similar kind of crossroads where we can move forward with a disruption kind of strategy. But the good news is I think anyone can actually create a category. Even companies that are early in their infancy, or companies that are perhaps operating in commoditized spaces and are looking for ways to sort of break away from the noise. And having a 10x product is great. If you see Slack and Airbnb, that's awesome if you have it. But I don't think it's a prerequisite. Because the truth is, entrepreneurs, founders, marketers, folks that are thinking about doing this, it's tough to sort of set out saying, we're going to go and create a category. I think what happens instead is you observe a bunch of signals that just seem kind of different than the normal kind of SaaStr blog post or whatever it is that you're reading. There's something that just doesn't really apply to us, and we can't figure out exactly a good model of who's done this before. So a few of those, you might see that there's actually little to no competitors in your space. There might be a handful of small companies that are kind of operating either at the edges, but there's no incumbent 800-pound gorilla that you're looking to sort of position against and steal share from. You might find, especially in the early days, that there's pretty low search volume. No one's really like searching for this problem by name on Google. Or if you're going to go buy ad inventory, why is this so cheap? Like, are people not? Is there no traffic that we can sort of kind of triage and pull onto our properties? There may not be a lot of media coverage, no beat reporter for this new industry. Perhaps like us, there might have been this persona that you observe that, wow, gosh, like I know Zendesk really does a lot for the support community. Salesforce has their community marketers. We've got a bunch of folks. But why isn't anyone really like focusing in on this one persona? How can we help make them heroes? That might be an observation you make. But you might also see that, well, someone is sort of trying to build community around these people, but it's small, it's niche, it's not a huge kind of thing. And broader than that, there's a lot of people that don't get it. And we had that challenge for many years. Some partners, even some investors, maybe even family members, where they're like, I don't get it. Like, customer support, is that what this is? And I think the reality there is our brain is sort of wired to make these cognitive references and sort of compartmentalize these ideas with things that we already understand, maybe not much different than the analyst community. So with that in mind, I wanted to put together just 5 tactical principles for creating a category. And moving kind of quick, because there's obviously a lot to cover in 16 minutes to create a whole movement and market, but a lot of these slides I'm sure will be available afterwards and can talk through it. So the first is to live your purpose, your values, and your culture out loud. So to be successful in category creation, your brand has to stand for something so much bigger than just the products that you sell. And beyond that, the community needs to know it. And so I think it's kind of corny, but the Simon Sinek, people buy why you do things, not what you do, really means something, especially in categories where you're going to have people that are kind of taking a chance on you and your company and your brand and sort of betting on your success. You want to be a brand that inspires. And I think at the end of the day, inspiration helps sort of catalyze community and ultimately drive more of the kind of growth flywheel as well. So purpose informs brand. It shows the industry and community a preview of that world that you're creating, that you're still in the early days of this world, but we want to own it. And I think of Salesforce and no software, right? It's the classic example. Like, this is a world we want to inspire. Our product is a CRM product, opportunity management, a disruptor, but there's a philosophy here, and we want to evangelize this philosophy to the rest of the world. Purpose draws talent in, just this whole notion of working for a company that exhibits purpose and lives their purpose as a competitive differentiator from others. Purpose inspires your community to sort of live up to that challenge and sort of persevere, and I'll talk about that a little bit, but some of the early days of category creation, if you're on the customer side, is lonely. Because you might believe in the idea, but you might not have the resources, you might not have the buy-in, you might not have the seat at the table to really go and actually kind of push for that change. And so purpose is something that can help kind of invest in that. And finally, I think purpose helps grow your business. It attracts the right type of customers. It helps keep them with you. I think people, as marketers, we talk about people buying emotionally at the end of the day. And so this is definitely an emotional chord that we're able to strike with the market. So how do you get started defining your purpose if you haven't already? One idea is that company purpose typically will always correlate to the personal purpose of the exec team or of the founding team. And so if you're earlier on your journey, defining kind of what is our collective purpose, and then looking for ways from a small group perspective to find the golden threads that tie it together. At Gainsight, our purpose was to be living proof that you can win in business while being human first. And so human first wasn't something we just talked about in sort of the second bullet and said, this is it, like we're done. We activated it. We talk a lot about performance management from a human-first perspective internally. How do we treat our employees? But also shows up externally here in bullet 3 in the community. Our conference theme was human first. We talked about how to build human first products. A lot of what Allison talked about from the product management and customer success kind of team alignment. How do we as product leaders build products with our human kind of users in mind? And so this, I think purpose is just something that every company regardless needs to sort of think about, but this is especially true for a brand that is sort of intends to inspire and lead a new movement. Second, focus on the people in your market and not just your products. This is kind of counterintuitive, especially in this sort of product-driven kind of reality that we're in today. But people are at the heart of new categories, not just products. We as humans have a desire to reach our fullest potential. This is, I can picture like the Maslow's chart, right? We want to move up into self-actualization as our needs are met, our psychological needs are met, and all these different things. So our job as a brand is to help the humans in this category sort of self-actualize and be a part of that journey with them. And so eventually products do matter, obviously. That's how we sell and monetize. But products are meant to be an accelerant on that path to self-actualization. And so as I think about this as a marketer, I translate this to our content marketing strategy, being intentional and not just about positioning our product and feature benefit and those types of things, but written to help do life with the people that are in this young market. Questions about, how do we kind of hire a great customer success manager? How do we run a quarterly business review meeting? These are things from a persona perspective, as we deeply understand these people, are challenged by. And as they go to Google to search for solutions to their challenges, we want to be one of the resources that ranks, which both builds kind of that affinity from a brand perspective and drives our inbound leads. And so these things aren't disconnected from growth either. So a few ways to think about either starting or sort of revamping a content marketing strategy through the lens of category creation. First, I think you got to name it. And this is something that's hard to do. But how do you sort of create a unique identifier that's going to be the rallying call for folks that you're sort of going to bring on this journey with you? Second is identifying people, whether internally or within the community, that can write content. This is hard, especially in the earlier days when a lot of the brain trust here lives in the founder's head, and everything's an opportunity cost, of course. And so getting our founder, our CEO, to write a lot of content is hard. And so how do we think about ways as marketers to help scale the capability of our founding team or our exec team from a content perspective? And then thinking about getting folks from the community to actually contribute to our properties. And I think one of the visions of that is, can we build the online destination for this industry? And so we aspire for our blog to be the TechCrunch for customer success. If you have a problem, a question, you need a resource, you can come to our site. And it's not just us like writing the story, but it's the whole community. So thinking about things like your online properties as a platform for the community to contribute. And so the actual content you write, thinking about articulating the why. So why does your category matter? Why should you invest? Why should the board care? These types of questions help arm your folks in your market with the resources to have that conversation, to go and kind of push for justification of investment in these types of things. And that helps sort of spread kind of the awareness of the category by name out in the marketplace. But the long tail is the how. And I touched on this earlier, so I won't spend too much time, but being able to articulate not just how your product solves their problem, but creating effectively like the resource library of how to be great as a leader, as an individual contributor, as whatever in this new function. And then finally, evangelize, or being kind of the flag bearer of this new thing. And so as you're sort of thinking about your content marketing, how can we sort of kind of lead with excitement and sort of get folks both opted into the category through our PR and comms and different efforts that way, and then serve and grow the folks that are already sort of invested. So that's number 2. Number 3 is kind of controversial. Not really. But create a lifestyle brand for your category. Controversial because I think you're not allowed to say the words lifestyle brand in front of B2B people. It's like a B2C thing, right? But let me ask, how many of you have watched webinars in your personal life for fun? Like a few people. Awesome, cool. Or downloaded ebooks. This one I think some folks might have done, but like ebooks that weren't like an Amazon or Kindle ebook, but like a PDF download from like a vendor, like for fun on a Friday night kind of a thing. It's tough, right? That's not how we consume content today. We're living in a world where, and the B2C folks really get this, we can Amazon Prime something and have it delivered like tomorrow. We can listen to any song on Spotify. Like consumer expectations are changing. And so we live in this like amazing world in our personal lives. Then as marketers, we go to work and like spam people, basically, right? Like look at your conversion rate and open rates and these things. So I don't want to hit on it too much because that's driving our inbound velocity. And so in the last section, we talked about like the importance of things like blog posts, ebooks, webinars, those types of things. And I appreciate that. And I think we should consider like ways to even improve how we deliver some of those experiences. But you also have an opportunity from a lifestyle branding perspective to sort of do life with these people, the humans that are in this job, and find more kind of creative ways of doing that. And so another way of saying it is the content marketing effort we talked about in the last section is meant to drive short-term impact, short-term outcomes. This is going to drive sort of the long-term affinity. Tough sometimes to justify from a budget perspective, but the former strategy helps you hit the number in Q2. This will help you double your valuation in 2 years. That's, I think, the way to think about it. And so for companies that are creating categories from a business context, think about this as like a career companion or a professional development effort. How can your brand sort of aspire to be that accompaniment to these folks' journey at their current organization or wherever they head next? So some ideas of what that looks like is complementing your traditional content marketing with things like digital media. It's just so much easier and cheaper these days to do video, pretty high quality video content. So how can you do like exclusive kind of whiteboard sessions and access to some great thought leaders in this new category using some video elements? Virtual events, being able to do kind of live streaming of virtual events is something we've done a lot of. Podcasting is still on the rise. I think there's still kind of a lot of upside for creating new and original content around podcasts. Also, thinking about, since we're putting the career and professional development filter on it, education and career services, what are these folks kind of thinking about as they're going through this journey? How do I certify my team on being great in this new category? We can build an online e-learning platform or e-learning kind of solution that's basically certifying these folks in best practices that we're helping to create. Next is online job board. These folks are trying to build their team. They're trying to hire. Can we almost act as this like recruiting agency? And this sounds like, okay, we don't have the time and resources for that, but I think it's like a $35 WordPress template that like scrapes different job boards around like a keyword. So it's not like expensive, but we found there's a lot of people that want to go there and say, I'm hiring in customer success. I know that your online property has a lot of traffic and you've got this resource. I want to post my job listing there, or I'm looking for a job. I need a place to go. So these are things that I think we can do for a pretty minimal cost that have pretty long-term impact. And a great example of a company that does this, you might have heard of Drift, that I think does a really good job with like video and content. They've grown their business quite well, purely on brand and inbound. And if you want to check out some case studies for this, like Seeking Wisdom is their podcast. They have this notion of Drift Insider from a content perspective. Even something called Insider Plus, which I thought was pretty creative with this Disney Plus world that we're in, where people are paying for premium content. So they're literally monetizing some of their content, not even their products, which I think is kind of interesting and maybe a presentation for another day. Pros and cons, I mean. All right, number 4, grow a community by doubling down on live events and experiences. And I think that it's days like today, right, where we're like trying as marketers to automate marketing and build like this sort of intimacy with our customers and with the market at large through digital programs. There's a lot of great stuff that helps us do that. But I think nothing replaces the in-person experience, the ability to meet your peers and talk to speakers, all these sorts of things. And it's almost weird as how we're, as humans, kind of programmed this way. We spend money to go to concerts to sing along to the same songs we can hear on the radio, or going to a sporting event to root for the team that like we watch all the time and follow, on Twitter or whatever. And these are, when we're in that room with these people, these are strangers that we've never met before, but we're united by the lyrics to the songs that we're sort of singing together or rooting for the team and kind of shouting out stats that we know for the teams that we love. And so just here today, like, B2B marketing and customer success, go-to-market, these are things that unite this group. That's so hard to create digitally. And I think that's what makes the sort of renaissance of live events really, really powerful. The other bit is that I mentioned this earlier, but could be a lonely journey for folks that are in this new category, not just the vendors that are trying to create it, but the participants that believe but may not have the buy-in from the organization. So there's this sort of like pursuit of connection and belonging, like back on the Maslow's kind of pyramid. And as the brand that's aspiring to lead that movement, we have an opportunity to sort of build that platform to connect and kind of create that sense of belonging, get folks within our industry to bump into each other and share best practices and meet and maybe get that next job or whatever the case is. So I think that's something that's really important. I'm going to move quick through this one, but if you're thinking, I want to do my own conference, I want to do my own industry event, where do I begin? Or maybe that sounds really intimidating and you're like, we don't have the team, the budget, the resources to go do a large conference. I'll just say we did ours with about 8 customers and like 90 days of notice. So it is possible. And over time, like it improves and all these sorts of things. You kind of build that muscle for how to do this stuff. So I don't know that if there's ever like a right time, but I would encourage you to think about hosting an event. And so if you're thinking about doing it as an event, or doing an event, I would position it as an industry event and not a customer event or a user event. There are ways to, I think, kind of activate a customer program on top of this, to talk roadmap, to do kind of customer awards, all these sorts of things. But the way you sort of contribute to the momentum of building this whole movement is to make it about the industry. And over the years for us, the data has remained true. It's been about 65% prospects, 35% customers at our events. And as our customer list grows, you'd think we'd be eating at that 65%. But we're enrolling new people into this sort of as a reflection of our marketable database and how we're growing our influence in the industry. So encourage you on that. Next is source speakers who are going to both add credibility to the movement and then validate this new category. And so, especially in the early days, we didn't have a brand. Like we were JBera Software at the time, and we were launching this conference called Pulse, all about customer success. We leaned on our speakers and the brand equity they brought to the table with their participation that helped us kind of drive registrations and build kind of the equity of the program. Next, the agenda ought to both educate and inspire. We talked about this is a program that's really just another channel for your content marketing. So the why, the how, helping folks kind of get better at their jobs by being there, not just be sold your products, right, and pitched on your products. And inspired. I think people come to these things to leave with like new ideas and to leave like with a renewed sense of purpose and excitement. And so I think there's something to that. Creating a memorable experience that puts your culture on display. I think the Radisson Inn airport hotel events of the past are kind of done, right? There's great lighting. There's these experiences that we're able to kind of really create. We've had a 90s themed event where we slimed our CEO on stage. We did an aircraft carrier. You do these things because you forget that as marketers, we're selling not just to logos, but the humans on the other side of those logos, and we can really appeal to them and kind of who they are. I'll move through this, but just thinking about pricing in terms of ways to drive people to your events, things like early bird going up, super early bird going up, or ending soon. Those compelling events are really what help people kind of get the credit card out and agree to sign up. Thinking about your prospects and your customers at these programs as having a dedicated kind of experience for them, because as I mentioned, if it's for the industry, there's going to be mostly prospects in the room. So how are you working with sales to not kind of break that barrier of being salesy, but also make sure that we're able to add value from like a white glove concierge experience perspective. So we had our SDRs, we had our AEs really kind of work on creating experiences for our target accounts that were attending our programs. And for customers, we had a customer lounge that had like Wi-Fi and coffee and like massages and all these sorts of things. So our customers had kind of access to these added kind of benefits. And then measuring success. I think events, the reason I'm so bullish on it, they impact so much more than just brand, I think. They impact how you create net new pipeline, how you close deals, how you're able to drive CSAT with your existing customers, expansion motions, driving better adoption of your features and products. It's really this sort of center of gravity for the category if you can do this right. I think that's pretty meaningful for the company. Finally, activating your customers as brand ambassadors. And so I think any company that stands on a stage or shouts into the void, positioning around a new category and doesn't hear anything back, you might want to rethink maybe the category a little bit, or at least the messaging. And so a better strategy is to actually activate the early people in your movement that believe, and give them the opportunity to sort of validate your positioning and say it by name, right? Say, hey, customer success is something that, or churn is something I'm concerned about, and my ability to better serve my customers. We have the leaky bucket problem. We can't really figure this out. There's a thing called customer success that we're really investing in, and we're excited to use Gainsight to help kind of operationalize that. That is so much more powerful than us just saying it. And so how do you think of activating your customers to tell your story for you? So a couple ways that, actually a big controversial thing, well, I'm on this controversial kick, it's not even that controversial, but is that companies don't create categories, customers do. We just have an opportunity to help put them in a position to validate and sort of create these motions. So here's how I think customers create categories. They validate that pain that you've observed, that you're talking about in your content and your PR and your blog posts, all these sorts of things, is real. It's a real thing. It's not a vitamin, it's a painkiller type, that whole kind of argument. This is a real pain point that we have in our business. They help you tell the story. If we're the only ones writing these best practices, I think that's fine. But having other folks share their story, as we are as any company sort of building a new category, and you're you're a startup on that journey, your sort of frame of reference is, what do other startups need? But then you close Cisco or you close GE, the amount of use cases that they're able to help us kind of think through and contribute to that story is better for us, and it's an opportunity for them to kind of share their wisdom kind of with the world. And that impacts how your products are built. Kind of what are the different kind of features and use cases that you might not have thought of as you're sort of on this journey yourself, that you can sort of build into the roadmap to improve your product. And then finally, customers have an opportunity to crown the category winner. Customer voice is so much more powerful today, just given kind of the channels that are available to really harness it. G2, Trust Radius, some of these different kind of review sites. There are so many ways to really, that customers actually go to bat and advocate on your behalf. So I'm out of time, but just some borrowed from Influitive on a few ideas here of how to really kind of mobilize your advocates once they're made successful, once you have customers that are happy, that are engaged, that are getting value from your products. You select them as potential advocates, and how do you make that ask? Giving them access potentially to exclusive experiences, a private networking event, a speaking opportunity, a customer-only lounge, as I mentioned at the industry event. Power, creating this belief that they can actually influence your strategy. And so doing like a product advisory board with your best customers, and then not just taking their ideas, but effectively doing it in some cases and showing them how they were able to contribute to your strategy and vision. And stuff is a bit more material, but maybe for the long tail of advocates, the t-shirts, the water bottles, these things maybe do work a little bit. So I'll end here, but I try to move quick through some of these tactics, but actually fortunate to have the opportunity to write a book about this that dives really deep into each one of these things and gives really just kind of an operating manual for people that want to go and build a category. Like that's sort of the idea behind the book. And then creates language of how do you talk to your board about this, your investors, your CFO, to really go and actually kind of operationalize a category creation strategy. So it's coming out October 15th, available everywhere books are sold. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.